Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about countries that feel like the USA but have far less taxes. Let's take a look. Hello everyone. I'm Javier Correa, Research and Development Associate here at Nomad Capitalist, and today we're going to be talking about low tax countries that feel like the US and Canada. Obviously, when we're relocating to a new country, one of the main things we're looking for is low taxes, or at least the Nomad Capitalist audience is looking for lower taxes, and that is obviously the main thing we talk about here on this channel: how to improve your lifestyle, how to increase your purchasing power, and how to dramatically lower your tax bill while at the same time chasing other objectives like better weather, places that are more conservative or more liberal, depending on what your position is on different issues and so forth. So today, I'm actually replying to one of our commenters who just plainly asked, listen, I'm an American or a Canadian, I want to lower my taxes, but at the same time, I don't feel as comfortable going maybe to the Gulf countries. Obviously, those are potentially very good for tax, but just culturally speaking, I don't feel very comfortable. And then Asia is maybe a bit too far away. I don't know. So what can be a bit closer, both geographically and culturally, to what I'm used to in the US, but help me lower my tax bill? So the first thing I want to mention here, as we always do, is that the US and Canada are in different situations, right? So if you're a Canadian and you're currently a tax resident of Canada, you can go through a tax non-residence procedure, and if everything is done correctly, potentially you pay a departure tax. In some cases you have to, in some cases you don't. It really depends on what kind of assets you have, if you've accumulated any earnings in those assets, etc. But globally speaking, just to oversimplify, a Canadian can leave the Canadian tax system and still preserve Canadian citizenship. Whereas an American, as you know, we've mentioned this several times on this channel, as long as an American is a US citizen, then unfortunately the IRS will go with that person no matter where that person goes, no matter where that person resides. Meaning that a US citizen, even if they relocate to one of the countries I'm going to mention in this video, they will still have to deal with the IRS. Now, can Americans potentially lower their taxes overseas? Yes. Can they dramatically lower their taxes? Yes, especially in the case of entrepreneurs, it is possible to lower that tax bill to numbers that are much, much lower than what they would have in the US. However, keep in mind that the reporting requirements and things of that nature will still be very much enforced, and that you do have to report everything back to the US. Now, if you do not wish to report things back to the US, or you feel that you want to leave the tax net entirely, and for other reasons you might be unhappy in the US, of course, renunciation is always an option. However, that is a very personal decision, and is something that each one of you has to assess basically individually. With that out of the way, that Canadians can essentially leave and keep their citizenship and Americans can't, let's dive into our top pick of countries. So the number one country I think that comes to mind when an American or a Canadian tells me, Javier, I want something close to home, but I want to dramatically lower my taxes, is Panama. So Panama is a country located in Central America, as most of you know, basically a territory that was colonized by the Spanish. So Spanish is the official language. However, you do have some local native tribes who still preserve their local language. But the first thing I want to mention is that, especially if you're in the southern US, like if you are in a place like Florida, Miami, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, then you'll find Panama City quite similar. And this is very good. If you're Canadian and you're used to going to Florida for the winter, but you want another winter home that is more tax friendly, again, Panama might ring a few bells. It might make you think of that Florida second residence that you potentially might have. Number one, the nice areas of Panama City really look like Miami. You've got skyscrapers, you've got big shopping malls, you've got, huge department stores, movie theaters that are very reminiscent of what you might find in the United States. In addition to that, the currency of Panama is the US dollar. Now, they do have the Balboa, which is kind of like their local currency, but at the end of the day, it is pegged to the US dollar, and the US dollar is widely accepted. So if you go to the ATM with that Chase, Bank of America, or BMO or TD card, when you're withdrawing cash, you are withdrawing US dollars. And obviously you can pay in US dollars in cash no matter where you go. And obviously if you're using your foreign credit cards in Panama, when you swipe, those cards are being swiped in US dollars. So not only does it look like Miami, but you're also using the dollar. In addition to that, it is also a very Americanized culture. So I've been to Panama City multiple times, and I can tell you that the presence that the US has there in terms of their soft culture influence is huge. So, for example, example, there's an SUV culture. A lot of people like their SUVs. A lot of people like their barbecues on the weekend, and that's, something very common. It is a very dog-friendly culture. So I know that in the US and Canada, and I myself as a dog parent, I don't like to say the term dog owner anymore. We all love our dogs. We're their parents. And so if you want a place that is friendly towards dogs in a way similar to how the US would be friendly towards dogs, then Panama is definitely a place you should be looking into. In addition to that, I would also say that in terms of education, it is also very North America oriented. So for example, if you have a family, if it's you, your significant other, and your children, or your spouse and your children, then you will find a great variety of English-speaking schools that follow the American curriculum. Now, in many places in the Middle East and Asia, you find more of the British curriculum, whereas in Panama, you really see this big presence of American schools, to the point where I was even looking into, for one of our clients, for example, there is a school that is like half French, half American, and you can follow like a half French, half US curriculum. So definitely you see that influence there. In addition to that, I can also tell you that I've been in Panama City during and around the time of Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, like different holidays, if you could call Halloween a holiday or more of a tradition, I would say at this point. But what I want to emphasize is that the way events are celebrated in Panama are very reminiscent, very similar to how they're celebrated in North America. So if you are in Panama City, if you're relocated to Panama City during the holiday season, you're going to feel like you're back at home. What are the major advantages of relocating to Panama? So number one, and I guess this is an advantage and disadvantage depending on who you are, but for many of our clients, especially Canadians, this is an advantage. So the first thing I want to mention is the weather. Obviously, Panama has a very like Miami style weather. It is warm all year round. In fact, even warmer than Miami. It does have a dry season and a rainy season, but you are definitely avoiding the winter. You're avoiding the snow. You're avoiding the cold. So if you're that kind of person who likes to, have a drink all year round by the swimming pool or go to the beach, Panama is definitely the place for you. So warm weather, very nice place. In addition to that, Panama, I would say, is a solid, I would say, tier B plus to A minus banking hub. So would I say that Panama is the destination to keep all of your money? No, not. I wouldn't say Panama is as solid as a US or a Panama to keep like very large amounts of money, but at the same time, it is also a place where I would consider keeping a significant amount of money. So I feel very comfortable with the Panamanian banks. We've seen them work very well. They have very decent credit card opportunities and credit card products, which again is very reminiscent of the US and Canada, which are more credit card oriented. It is also possible to get a good solid, 30-year, 20-year mortgage in Panama, again, reminiscent of North America. This is not very common in all places around the world, but definitely Panama does have that kind of like North American feel. And more to that, it is also not only a banking hub, especially a regional banking hub, but it is also a major hub for business. If you are into that business climate, you're a global investor, you want to operate from Panama, you're going to find it very, very easy to do so. Not only do you have a great airport that connects you to basically anywhere in the world and that is very well connected to North America with flights to Miami, New York, Washington, Las Vegas, Toronto, Montreal. I mean, if you're going to be traveling back and forth for business between North America and Panama, definitely it's a great hub and you're not going to have any issues with multiple airlines flying back and forth. The business district, or I guess the new district, Costa del Este, which is a planned community acting like kind of a suburb of Panama City, is very reminiscent of Brickell, Miami, and you can have beautiful offices. That environment for business is really great. Now, obviously, let's get to the part that I like the most, which is the taxes. Now, obviously, as I would like to say, I'm Javier, so Javier equals taxes. I am the tax Terminator after all. And I cannot talk about Panama without talking about taxes. So Panama has a territorial tax system, which makes it very attractive. And in essence, what that means is that Panama only taxes income that is sourced within its territory. So Panama does not tax income that is sourced outside of Panama. So that means that dividends from any foreign company you may potentially own, that's tax-free in Panama. Interest that you may potentially receive from bank accounts or bond portfolios that are located outside of Panama, that is tax-free. In addition to that, any capital gains, anything you have that is foreign sourced will be tax-free in Panama. Now, the big thing that I think sets Panama apart from other territorial tax countries is that Panama has an interesting exception to the territoriality rule, which is that if, for example, you're a service provider and you're located in Panama and you're doing the work from Panama, normally that income should be Panamanian source. However, Panama has an interesting rule whereby if your clients are all foreign and if the economic benefit, the economic substance of that service that you're providing is basically realized, or I would say takes place outside of Panama, then that will still be considered foreign source, right? So that's very important. That means you can operate a business from Panama and still have the income derived from that business be considered foreign source, which is very rare. It doesn't happen in other territorial tax countries, which makes Panama a very interesting and tax-friendly hub. Also, if you're into international trade and you're buying and selling goods from around the world, again, you can operate from a Panamanian office, have employees in Panama, have your entire operation in Panama, and provided that the goods you're buying and selling don't actually enter the Panamanian territory, then again, that income is considered foreign source. So you can move your shop to Panama. In the case of Canadians, that means you can potentially operate completely tax-free if you have the right offshore corporate structure, or potentially a good combination of a Panamanian and offshore corporate structure, and you keep all your clients overseas and you're providing a service or you're doing something with merchandise like I just described. Canadians, you could potentially be completely tax-free. In the case of Americans, this jurisdiction can be tax neutral, which is very beneficial, seeing as you have to still remain compliant in the US and still potentially you'll have a tax bill in the US, but at least Panama won't come in and won't like add on any additional tax burden. So definitely, from all you can see, I would say Panama is my top #1 choice. I'm personally a big fan of Panama, and especially for North Americans, it's a great soft landing, big North American community there. Now, my second pick, which is very different in many ways, but still similar to North America, would be Ireland. So we do talk about Ireland a lot on this channel. Ireland is obviously on the other side of the pond. It's in Europe, and Ireland has this very friendly, non-domiciled tax regime. So unlike Panama, that is a territorial tax country, Ireland has this system whereby, domicile and residence have a clear distinction when it comes to tax policy. So as a brief refresher, domicile is where you're from. It's your homeland. It's very much linked to the center of your vital interest, whereas residence is just where you happen to physically live at any given moment. So many people use both terms interchangeably. This is incorrect. However, very few countries have a distinction in terms of the tax consequences of establishing domicile or residence. So in the case of Ireland, if you relocate to Ireland as a foreigner, it is very clear that you can benefit from the system. As an Irish citizen, it depends. If you obtain citizenship by descent from that great-grandparent or grandparent from Ireland, it is easier, but I would say for citizens, you have to take a closer look, but it's not impossible. But anyway, what does this mean? If you relocate to Ireland and you're under the non-domicile tax system, it globally means that your foreign income remains untaxed as long as it remains outside of Ireland, meaning that if you're running an international business, if you have employees in other countries, if you have great investment income that is located in a portfolio in Switzerland or, in Singapore or wherever it may be, then potentially you can really defer taxation or even avoid taxation in Ireland to a great extent, provided that you only need a small percentage of your income to actually live and to actually fund your lifestyle in Ireland. So from a tax perspective, it works under those circumstances. Now, in terms of lifestyle, obviously Ireland is not reminiscent of Miami, but if you're more from like the northern states, if you're from Massachusetts, New York, more from the New England area, you might find things are a bit familiar to you. So, the weather is relatively similar. So if you're into the cooler, more, rainier weather, then I guess Ireland will work for you. In addition to that, obviously English is the native language there, along with obviously their local tongues, but obviously English is the main thing that is spoken, and that means that your humor, your culture will be very easily integratable into Ireland. In addition to that, we cannot overlook the fact that Canada and the US have historically been countries that have attracted millions upon millions of Irish immigrants. I was talking to one of our Irish colleagues the other day. I don't know if these figures are entirely accurate, but they mentioned that there are 5 times more Irish passport holders in the US than there are in Ireland proper. So that shows you a lot how these countries are very much linked. They are, they have a common culture, a common people. And I think especially if you have that Irish or Scottish or, overall British or UK surrounding ancestry, then you might find it very comfortable for you to live in Ireland. So same language, weather similar if you're in the northern states or Canada, and culturally, the way Christmas and other events are celebrated, similar to what I mentioned for Panama, again, also very, very similar. So I would say those are my top two picks, one for people looking for warmer weather, one for people looking for much more of the cooler weather. So depending on what you're looking for, Nomad Capitalist is the place to go. Obviously, these are my top two picks, but there are other places that potentially Canadians and Americans can go to lower their taxes depending on what they're looking for. But obviously, these are the places that are very interesting. I would give a final honorable mention maybe to the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic is an interesting place you could look into. Not entirely as tax-friendly as Panama, but still quite tax-friendly with a semi-territorial tax system. Now, it is more island living, so it is more like maybe for retirees. Maybe if you're more business-oriented, I would definitely stick more to the Panama side of things. But if you're looking for, again, a hub that is well connected to North America, relatively large expat community, and that has that bit of a North American feel with the big houses, the SUVs, the shopping malls, and the Dominican Republic is a place that you could potentially look into. Again, semi-territorial tax system. One final positive note that I believe is worth mentioning is that both of these countries, Panama and Ireland, as well as our honorable mention of the Dominican Republic, have options for you to emigrate to. So obviously Ireland, you can claim citizenship by descent, which would be ideal, but also you can potentially start a company and work your way towards citizenship and potentially get a great second or third passport by doing that. In the case of Panama, for example, you have multiple options from putting money in the bank and earning a term deposit that generates at least $800 or so a month. You can get residence there. You can get residence by investing in real estate. You can get residence by starting a company and hiring as little as one person. You could potentially get residence in Panama. In the case of the Dominican Republic, you have options for pensioners. You've got options, again, for investors that are doing capital injections into a company. And then from there, you can do multiple things with that, from starting a business to holding property. So if you're a high net worth individual, regardless of your ancestry, there are options through companies and other types of investment assets for you to legally emigrate to Panama, the DR, or Ireland, and even potentially work your way towards citizenship in all of those cases. Now, obviously, depending on your situation, depending on whether you're married, whether you're not married, depending on the investment level that you're making, especially in the case of Panama and the DR, you might get access to citizenship a bit faster or a bit more slowly. So globally speaking, in the case of citizenship, the DR would be the fastest, with one potential route for citizenship that could be done in under 1 year. In the case of Ireland, you do have to commit time on the ground, and potentially this could take 5 years plus. In the case of Panama, it'll again depend on how quickly you can get permanent residence, depending on the level of money you're investing. But it's safe to say that in the case of Panama, if you're investing in the high hundreds of thousands or even or the millions, then you will very rapidly access that permanent residence. And overall, in around 5 years, we could start talking about citizenship, depending on your background. Obviously, this could take a bit more or a bit less, depending on your individual circumstances. So there you have it. 2 picks, 1 honorable mention, nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Please leave a comment below, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next video.
This is Oman, and today we're showing you luxury living in its beautiful capital city of Muscat. Now we're going to show you one of the sexiest luxury villas here in Oman.
We're going to show you how to live like a king